with most morning programs, people roll in a little bit on their own schedule, and that's perfectly fine. My name is Kurt Witcher. I'm Director of Special Collections and manager of the Genealogy Center here at the Allen County Public Library. And with my colleague, Allison Singleton, we are so pleased that you're here. Whether you're here in this room or here online, this is going to be an amazing day. There'll be a lot of information shared. There'll be a lot of opportunities to network and exchange, and I hope a lot of opportunities to walk away inspired and to think of doing new things. I'd like to introduce a person who increasingly needs no introduction, Rick Voigt. Our team here at the library has known Rick for a number of years, doing really good things. And he will do the official introduction of our first presenter this morning and get the day kicked off. But there's going to be a lot of really cool things happening today. Love that technical term, don't you? Cool, especially when it's going to be 80 today. So Rick, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. Well, to those of you who are here in the room, as well as those of you who are online, it is truly my honor to be in one of my favorite places anywhere, but a place that I travel to and visit as frequently as I can, because this is Mecca from a genealogy family history perspective. This day is really, really important. I guess it was, what was it, Josh? 4 years ago, 3 years ago, that we had an event here with you and Laura Hedgecock, and we were starting to talk about bringing family history and aging health together. And what I further like about today is library at home and genealogy, family history, and aging well. So first, Kurt, John, Allison, others, thank you for having us. How many people in the room are coming into this event from a family history perspective first? Aging perspective. Very cool. So for those of you online, there's about 80% of the room from an aging perspective and 20% from a family history perspective. If we could be capturing that same question, Allison, online, that would be really, really cool. Why are we doing this? First off, if you're involved in family history genealogy, we tend to become more interested in where we came from as we age, and our society of people that we interact with can find benefit from neurogenesis and neuroplasticity in order to be able to help us age better. So the alignment of family history and aging well makes a bunch of sense. So that's why we brought together Josh, Kurt and John, Charlotte Yeh. Charlotte Yeh is a wonderful person. I was sharing a moment ago that I met her because of our underwater world. I was on a panel with her one time, and she's a diver. Her daughter is very involved in that as well. And then scuba diving, and then I'll finish things up, and also have a friend that I'll be introducing with some future things that we're doing. So without further ado, Dr. Josh Freitas. I was talking, Josh, to somebody recently about how long we've known each other, and that I've gotten to know you from when you were a PhD candidate to going through your dissertation, and now being a full doctor for over a year now, I think. And your research into many sorts of brain health and reminiscence therapy. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, but thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, so thank you all for the opportunity today. My name's Josh. A little bit about my background. I'm a psychogerontologist, so I work with seniors primarily with dementia or people in earlier stages that might be living at home too as well, and finding ways to help them age in place more successfully. So a lot of my work focuses on the physical design, the home or the physical structures as well as the human structure. So the interaction, the tools that we use to foster those relationships with photoreminiscence really can make a big impact. And I think photoreminiscence, we always think of sitting down and looking at a photo, but I think it's more intentional than that too as well. A little bit about my background. Originally, I was a music therapist. Then I've worked in memory care for like 15 years now. I've been a researcher for a while as well, doing some projects. Rick and I did one on photo-based reminiscence therapy, which was super insightful to see in our communities. But my goal today is to give you as much information as possible. So I'm going to share my screen and we will jump right in. Today's brain health and photoreminiscence. So we're going to be talking about how do photos intersect with the whole thing of brain health. So we'll talk a little bit about the brain. We'll talk about different cognition states such as dementia or mild cognitive impairment. But we'll also work through how can you use photos around the house or right now as a way to spark neurogenesis or neuroplasticity. And Rick mentioned these terms, so I'm going to break them down before we even jump in. Is neurogenesis is the idea that we have things that might be dormant and we stimulate them by creating these events. So it might be seeing a photo that you might have forgotten about a friend in the past, just like I have. I look at high school photos and I'm like, oh, I totally forgot about this person. Neurogenesis starts to revamp those stories and bring them back to the forefront. Neuroplasticity is that learning and that the brain is always moldable. So even for people with dementia, as much as we say child, yes, they're very moldable, but the molding of the brain actually goes throughout the entire lifespan. Even when people have cognitive issues, is that the brain is constantly rewiring itself based on the interactions we have and the environments that we're in. So those two terms are kind of embedded in here. And a little bit about my background is I'm a psychogerontologist, like I shared. I serve as the chief research officer for Certis Institute. We have 5 standalone memory cares here in Florida where we do research projects and we find out how programmatic lifestyle programs can impact quality of life. And then I also serve as the chair of the board and the chief education officer at the National Institute for Dementia Education. So I get to marry research and education and give it all to you guys, which I'm very honored to be able to be here today. Okay. Okay. So the first thing is I just wanted to define what is brain health and aging, and this is kind of just a working definition for today. Is brain health is in aging is the capacity to preserve memories, attention, problem solving, emotional well-being, while adapting to life's changes, being agile through that. It emphasizes neurological resilience, so making sure that the brain stays strong as you keep things in place, and helps us sustain independence and quality of life. Two things we really want to focus on as we age, and which photos can intersect into all aspects of this definition. So preserving memory, it's a way to actually reinforce or decrease cognitive load, it's called, but it can also help with attention to pull someone's attention to a conversation or to a focal point of connection. And then well-being is, we'll talk about this today, but looking at certain types of photos can create and invoke happiness. So exposing people to certain types of photos at certain times a day might help with quality of life, making people feel great, but also visual cues, such as somebody with dementia might have Down syndrome, sundowning, not Down syndrome, I apologize, sundowning, which is something that happens in the evening, but showing certain photos can decrease that. And we'll talk about that today. So the power of photos intersects into all aspects of this definition. Something that's grounded underneath, and I put medicine in quotations because I'm not giving medical advice today, but there's a branch of something called lifestyle medicine, which is very impactful in the aging process. And it's these domains over here to the right. So physical activity, nutrition, stress management, avoidance of, and I put risk, but it's risky substances under the title. But for today, I'm saying avoidance of risk, restorative sleep, and then social connections. So really briefly, is photos can impact each of these aspects. I'll give you a small little sample size before we jump in. Physical activity, actually having exposure to photos of people exercising and then actually getting people to exercise more. Or showing a photo before you're going to go for a walk, showing, hey, we're going to be going to walk to this park. Actually stimulating that end point using a photo or a cue to get somebody to exercise, or actually having exercise cards or photos to show how to do that exercise might prompt them to do that. Nutrition, as research shows, if you look at photos before eating, sometimes you'll eat more food, but looking at healthier photos too as well, or recipe books. And we'll talk a little bit about that reminiscence today. Stress management is exposure to certain types of photos that make you less stressful. So I know for me, I have pictures of my kids. I even have them on a coffee cup right here. So being exposed to those joyous moments can reduce stress, especially in times of anxiety, to pull away and look at certain photos to remember the big picture of life and how the photos and how we contribute. And then avoidance of risk. I share this kind of using visual cues or photos to reduce that risk, or using photos from medicine compliance or other things, which we'll talk about today. Restorative sleep is using visual aids to foster the brain or convince the brain when it's nighttime versus morning to help with sleep patterns, or looking at certain photos that can relax us before bed. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then social connections is this is probably the most powerful domain, as I think during COVID, we saw social isolation and a lot of people withdraw, but the power of a photo can bring people together. It's a way for us to share our legacy, our stories, but more so is even how do people connect around a photo? And I'll talk about that a little today. Neurological attunement is when we both look at a photo together, we approach it differently and how the brain kind of operates throughout that process. So, what are the effects? And I'm calling this a ecosystem, so a brain health ecosystem. So I want you to think of the photos you have around you, whether it's on your cell phone, on the walls at home, the ones in the drawer, the ones that your kids have that you can ask for copies of. All of that is a healthy ecosystem of getting those photos and those memories. So our environment is a big part of this. So vocation, where we were, where we've lived, that's all processed in a part of the brain we'll talk about called the hippocampus. And then the people we spend time with, we can revisit that in a photo and still have similar feelings. It might be a Christmas photo of a family gathering, but it's a great way to revisit those positive memories. And then the actions we take or our routines. Literature actually shows that we're about 70% routine. And I share that because actually, I'll explain it more, but we are all conditioned into different responses when it comes to how we act. Like if I wave to you, you wave back. If I say hello, you say hello back. We have a lot of pre-programming that what I love about a photo is that we can sit down and that pre-programming can be disrupted in a way to slow down, separate, and look at that photo and revisit. We'll talk about that today. And then lifestyle choices, which I talked about lifestyle medicine, but the choices we make really make an impact. And I would say the biggest thing, if you wanted to research more, is the blue zones. All around the world, they have these zones that are like health meccas where people are living longer, well into their 90s and sometimes into the hundreds. And a lot of that is the lifestyle choices we have. So the foods we eat, different things. But I think photos portray a way to create some of those lifestyle habits too, as well. And we'll talk about habit change as well. And I just put a disclaimer in there that these can all be changed by looking at photos and changing to exposure to different photos as well. Now, one thing I put in my my presentation here, and I'm not very good with tools, but I put it in here, is I put this logo on slides that I feel like I want to give you guys tools to use at home. So as I go through and I see this, I know I want to stop and give you some tools to use at home. So throughout my presentation, you'll see this logo. Um, and it's for me to stop, and it's more of a mental cue for myself to use a photo to slow down and make sure I give you guys information. So my first question to you, you don't have to say it out loud, but I'm going to give you a second to think about it, is when do we start aging? Now, a lot of people will give me different answers here. They will say it's from birth, it's from this. It's actually after the age of 30. It's a process called sarcopenia, which we produce less and less flesh. So that's why Olympians, you see that they aren't in their 50s, 60s in the Olympics, is we're producing less flesh, less muscle. Some research actually indicates that it's at the age of 19 because of our eyes. So with that in mind, is we are all aging after the age of 30. And with that comes cognition. And we will all have some type of cognitive decline after the age of 65. And that means, yes, we might not be as sharp or as agile, but this is where wisdom comes in, as we have that whole life experience that we can resurface. And that's where neurogenesis And neuroplasticity is really important. We have all this life knowledge after 30 that we can really share with people, and by revisiting it keeps our brains sharper. So our relation to what we see, what happens as we age, we become more reliant on surface value, the things that we see. So we might become less reliant on dates and times and specific information, propositional knowledge. So 1994, this date, that we might not become as, but in that year, blah, 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 blah. And it allows us to have that emotional connection. We rely on something called our emotional brain, which we'll talk about. Um, and this all emerges from the fabric of our experiences. Is you have a whole life of experiences, and we can revisit that and share and create wisdom and legacy for future generations as well. A lot of times when we're in our 60s, 70s, and 80s, we have such rich stories that can help influence the next generation. I have people with dementia I work with all the time, and they're giving me great advice, from financial advice to how to raise my kids. And it's stuff that's all been practiced already. So they're sharing that knowledge. And I find that a photo is a great way to do that, where I can sit down, show a picture of my kids, and a resident will say, "Hey, have you tried this with your kids? Or have you been to a park? Have you done this?" And it can create a really rich story. So there's a term called retrogenesis. And this is, in a nutshell, is we accumulate this life cycle. So we're babies all the way to midlife, and then we start to go back towards aging. We actually start to shrink a little. Cognitively, if we have dementia, we will revert back to those basic things of childhood. So holding a hand, bright colors. The way I explain this in retrogenesis is the first things in are the last things out. And how I share this is, if you speak a language, for example, in most cases, if you spoke language 1, 2, and 3, and you're aging and might have dementia or cognitive challenges, it's easier to revert back to your native language, the first language you spoke. Same thing is for children, child 1, child 2, child 3. It's very common for people that are older that might have some cognitive challenges to call everybody by their eldest child's name. The one thing I want to point out to you in this, it's helpful when picking photos, is the ability to categorize becomes one of our fourth or fifth abilities as the aging process. So it's very comfortable for somebody to put things into categories. Photos I love, photos I don't really like so much, or organizing them from family photos to pet photos to vocations. And that's a great tool that remains that you can use when doing photo reminiscences. Let's categorize and organize this. And I know on Rick's page, they have a whole program on how to organize your photos, which cognitively is a really great exercise, but also the ability to revisit memories can be really fascinating. So this is retrogenesis. First things in, last things out. And I'll talk a little bit about this later with binary decision making, which is two choices that make it really easy, and I'll talk about that soon. Now, there's with habits and habit change. So just to use a photo, we have photos all around, but to be intentional and to select the right photos, this is something called the carrot principle. And it's a way to cue with a photo, create an action around that photo. And the reward is that it cues that person or becomes a lifestyle habit. So with this, I'll give you an example that is not photo related, but carrot principle related. We had residents that would not brush their teeth. We are all memory care. And what we did is we did hand over hand, got them to brush their teeth. So that motor skill, kinesthetic skill. So that was the cue. The action was the hand over hand, getting them involved. And around the 35-day mark, the reward is about more than 50% of them were brushing their own teeth again. So it's a prompt, it's a habit. And I said 70% of who we are is our habits, our reactions to things. So it is able to do that. Now with a photo, this might be cueing with a certain photo, a picture of something on the bathroom door. The action is seeing that over and over, and the reward is that we're triggered to know to go to the bathroom for people maybe with later stages of dementia. but also it could be walking. It could be a picture that you have a cue on your front door or somewhere where it says 5-minute walk and it has a picture of somebody walking. That cue over time, and then you take action on that 5 minute. And the reward is that healthy action around 90 days actually become a lifestyle change where now you're walking more, which we know walking is incredibly impactful for the aging population. I won't get too much into that, but it is very, very powerful. So you should walk every day, a minimum of 5 minutes. So, human perspective and epistemology. So, I just use these terms to make myself sound smart, but is our perspective. How do we see the world? And we're going to talk about this. And epistemology simply means our ways of knowing. We come to know our world through our cognition, but also the visual cues we have around us, whether it's pictures of people, the layout, the artwork we have in our house. That all influences how we feel, how we react, how we approach, and becomes part of our personality as well over time. So I share this here because these are two photos. And if we look at them, they look very different. The one to the left is a bib or a napkin just covering up. Now, from a dignity perspective, it doesn't look as great. But if you look at the one to the right, and I don't know if yours is backwards now because of the way it's per for me, the one on the right is the person standing, is you can see that this is very fashionable. It's a photo, it's a dining scarf that can be used in memory care that helps reduce if somebody needs to be changed or stay clean or is out in public, it looks more presentable. Now, these two photos foster different feelings. So here is a perfect example. Our perspective could it be a bib or could it be a scarf? And that psychologically changes how we approach or feel about something. So making sure we provide dignity. But this is a perfect example. We both look at these photos and we see a very different feeling based on what we're seeing. So keeping in mind the things that we use. So the dining scarf versus a bib or napkin can shape how we feel. And that is the same thing with a photo. What's in a photo can shape how we feel based on what we're seeing. So there's also different things as touching and feeling and perceiving. There's a whole field called osteopathic neuroscience, which isn't a traditional field, but a talked about field. And it's about the things we touch and feel in our bones reactions, our muscles tensing, actually shapes how we process things. So in our preliminary study that we did, is we noticed that when it was a digital photo versus a physical touch photo, it had a different reaction from the people where they could pass it around versus swiping. And we're seeing that change with society. Both have positive impacts because you have the ability to organize and swipe, but also the physical characteristics generationally is that most older adults like to touch that photo and put it and organize it and put it into things. There's also a physical feeling of you're exposed to certain photos on your phone all the time, so we can become desensitized, and this can be known as fatigue. So, photo fatigue could be that we see those photos and we just swipe and we don't actually engage with them. Versus what we see is if you have a physical photo that you can touch or photo album in the house, even if you make that photo album, it's a process to make it. You can revisit it and explore it, but also when you go get that and bring it back, it's a whole experience in itself, and it makes it very intentional. So you can see that both have positive and negative effects, but the idea is that physical touch and feel shapes the brain. Research actually shows that for somebody with dementia in particular, if they have something to physically touch, they're 38% more likely to focus on it. So instead of swiping, actually having a photo or a photo book in hand. Research shows it's called the cocktail party theory, is that you and I can have a conversation and block the world out. For somebody with dementia, that's difficult. So what we notice is if you give them something to hold on to, it's a focal point for them to focus. And that's where a photo can come really, really important. And this might be even a photo of a stock photo that is going to the doctors. So, hey, mom, here's a photo. We're gonna be going to the doctors in about 15 minutes. Have them hold that photo. It might be a good prompt for them to say, okay, I'm reminded. And it allows them to focus in and to see it visually and auditorily. So the brain is super fascinating. We could spend all day on the brain, but there's two parts that are really important when we're specifically looking at a photo. And one is the hippocampus, which is that very bottom one. This is the part of the brain that takes a memory and processes it into long term. It's like a filtration system. but it's also for geographical locations. So if you revisit a story or different things that are from different parks around the United States or vacations, that's activated is geographical placement of oneself in different places. But unfortunately, with most types of dementia, especially Alzheimer's, this is damaged and it will have atrophy of the hippocampus, which means it's shrinking, which means it's more difficult to intake that new memory. They still can, it just takes more exposure and it becomes distorted sometimes. So here is jogging this is with neuroplasticity and neurogenesis, you're activating this almost like a muscle. And I'll give you an example. Taxi drivers in London have a bigger hippocampus because they have to memorize all the streets and they have to constantly do that like a muscle, like you're strengthening your bicep. That's the same that a photo does. Is a photo can be a great memory jog to try to stimulate this part of the brain, thinking of different locations, times, where we were. Don't quiz the person, but more so allow open response, like, hey, this looks like a really fun place, doesn't it? Open responses to think about where they might be. Curiosity as well releases glutamate. So you might say, does this look like a place you would want to go? And that can also spark some of that conversation. This other part of the brain here is the amygdala, which is the next one over. And this is used to be known as our fear center, but now it's more of our sensory based how you make me feel. And this is where it's really important, especially for dementia, is um, eye contact, touch, feel, things to hold on to. That part of the brain can be challenged by creating different emotional states to walk through, creating joy, fear. And we are hardwired to be a little more negative, which I won't talk too much about the evolution of that. But these two parts of the brains can be really activated when looking at photos. So hippocampus might be dates, times, specifics, trying to recall, or location. And amygdala is how does this make me feel? Revisiting those emotions at that time of looking at a photo. So here's oxygen, and I want to give you a really great tool because I see the tool mark up in the corner. Is oxygen is incredibly important. For example, a lot of breathing exercises helps boost cognition and focus and concentration. One research study, which was really fascinating, was people that had cognitive challenges. Um, they would take 3 breaths in the morning, afternoon, and evening, where they would actually score higher in mental exams because they were more grounded. To give you some statistics, our brain's only 2% of our body mass, but can use up to 25 to 50% of our oxygen. So every breath you're taking in could be going to the brain. So that's why big, deep breaths before you talk about a photo can really help. Also, they show if you take 4 big breaths, it can reset something called your sympathetic nervous system and make you nice and relaxed. So those things, even before a big event or a big family event, uh, regardless of dementia or not, for me even, I can reset my sympathetic nervous system by taking 4 big breaths. And there's a whole mindfulness-based research on this stuff. But for you, just oxygen, just a few big breaths before you have to do something to reset. So now the brain can be broken into 2 sections, and I share this because it's useful information on here of how we approach and how we do things. So we all have a neurological dominant side, which isn't always the hand we write with. Typically, it's the foot we step out with. So anyone in that room, if you stood up and you took a step out, that would be your neurological dominant side. Now, keep in mind, our brains are opposite of our bodies. So this part of the brain, this part, this ear, so on and so forth. The reason I share this is because what we've noticed is that if you approach people on their non-dominant side for conversations, reminiscing, that allows us into their world more. People are more defensive on their dominant side. They actually kind of like ignore. So approaching from the front, getting down and using that photo with mom or dad or somebody else is it can be very powerful. Now, I'm just going to throw a fact out there too, as well. For people with dementia, they typically will wander in the direction of their dominant side. So if they step out their right foot, typically they'll walk out of their house and go in that direction. So you can see how the brain interacts depending on our dominant side. Also, research shows that neurogenesis, which is trying new things to stimulate the brain, try using your non-dominant hand. So this could be actually holding a photo in your non-dominant hand might open a different part of the brain. So instead of looking at that photo and saying, oh, this is Christmas, is put it in the other hand and have them analyze it too as well. By that physical touch orients a different part of the brain because you're activating it based on touch. For you in this room too, is they show that this type of stuff might be a good mitigator for dementia, is trying things with your non-dominant hand to tap in and have neurogenesis created too as well, and neuroplasticity. So it might be brushing your teeth with your non-dominant hand, so on and so forth. But for photos, try putting things in their non-dominant hand. Another thing too I find fascinating is they have one where people journal and they try to write in the journal with their non-dominant hand. And that could be a reminiscence project, not photo specific, but that also can open up different parts of the brain as well. So here is fascinating is our bodies, and we'll talk about our bodies and connections to our brain, which is healthy. And now lifestyle medicine is really great to keep our bones and muscles and the overall ecosystem of staying brain healthy in play. But there's something called osteopathic neuroscience, which is our bones, muscles, joints, cardiovascular system. All of these things interplay about how we feel and how we react, especially as we age. I mentioned we have sarcopenia, so we have less flesh. We're actually changing from temperature where we're looking at a photo. So I tell people be intentional about the photos you're looking at. If it's on a front porch versus it being inside, each of these different places will have a different feel, a different outcome. So I always tell people, even if you have a photo album, look at that photo album and be intentional. Take that photo album and go into different places and look at it. And you'll have a different experience depending on where you are. Front porch, your living room, your back porch. Each of those will have a different feel. So keep in mind the people you're looking at photos with will also have a different feel depending on where you are. Now, if you're visiting mom and dad and they're living at home, and we've talked about after the age of 65, cognition isn't as sharp. Maybe it's limiting distractings at the kitchen table to look through that. So being intentional with it as much as possible. There's also our nervous system as we have responses based on what we see. And this is same with photos. Like, for example, we might listen to a song and get goosebumps, or look at a photo and be revisited about something. So I share this because we have our neurocortex, but we also have our spinal cord and something called the vagus nerve, which connects everything in our stomach, our gut, but they communicate back and forth. So when you look at a photo, it's not just cognitive, it's not all brain, it's body too. Your whole body reacts when you see certain things. So keep that in mind. And I'm going to talk about the brain a little bit more in a minute. Now, I'm going to try to break the idea that I know we talk about our five senses. So here they are. We have vision, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. All of these can actually increase reminiscence with somebody. So if you're looking at a photo of something, is have something to go along with it. Maybe it's a wedding photo with the slow dance song that is playing in the background. And maybe it's even pulling out the wedding dress to be able to talk about. What it shows is the more modalities or senses we tap into, the more successful the reminiscence is. And it might be, okay, we're going to talk about our camping, and we're looking at pictures of when we went camping when I was 15 years old. You might have the smell of pine in the background from aromatherapy standpoint. Having those smells around, or a taste, it might be having a s'more in addition to the smell, and then hearing, maybe I'll put crickets on in the background as long as it's not distracting. And then I have visual and then touch. Maybe it's some branches or something I can touch from camping. What this does is it is a multimodality that allows our senses to really revisit that, because my tasting of a s'more might bring me back to a different part of that same event versus visually just looking at it. It can also bring me back and remind me of different things, or cue me to go down different avenues of reminiscence. Now, I want to break that stigma a little bit about only having five senses. A lot of researchers are digging into this, is that a lot of people are indicating we have 30 to 40 different senses, and something like full bladder, different things in our body can actually change our senses. So keep in mind, we have more than the five. Pain is another one that's not shown here, but hunger can be another sense too as well, is we have 30 to 40 senses too as well. So keeping in mind, there's different ways for us to actually tap into this. Now, with the Aroma therapy, I think it's very powerful, is to have a smell in the background. And there's something called neurotransmitters in the brain that is released based on different life events or what we're exposed to. So I have the tool there again, is I'm going to share things like peppermint can wake you up in the morning, but eucalyptus or lavender might get you sleepy at night. But during the day, research is even showing that cognition might be boosted by the smell of rosemary or cedar wood. So sparking that or having that in the background can create a multimodality sense while reminiscence. So looking at not just the photo as part of reminiscence, but the whole experience that you create in that and being intentional with your selection. Music is super powerful. It can open up so many different parts. For me, I see people all the time, they have dementia, they have difficulty with speaking, known as aphasia, and you put their favorite song on and they'll sing every single lyric. But, with music or even music therapy, it can be really powerful if you have a military song and they were in the military, long as it's appropriate and it doesn't trigger anything, is they might actually like to see photos of themselves in the military while they listen to that song. So thinking of the different senses and then creating that reminiscence, environment, still ecosystem of putting it all together. Um, so here is the brain. And so neuroscience and interaction is that when we interact and become engaged in something, our whole body changes, our brain changes. But what I love about this is a photo, instead of just holding a photo and going through, don't be task oriented, be experiential oriented. It's about the experience you have with that photo, not just getting through them because you had 10 photos you wanted to look at. Even one photo we learned can be so powerful. You could look at one photo and have a 10 to 15-minute conversation about it. So don't think of photo reminiscence as you got to get to the end, but more so, what is the experience that it creates between you and another person? And how do you engage with that photo is more important than just looking at it, is the conversations you have, the experience it feels, the other conversations, which we'll talk about what quilting a conversation is that can be really powerful and healthy for the brain to tap into different parts. Research also shows, I didn't put it in here, but telomeres, the end caps of your DNA, can actually be changed when you're engaged. And this can be very, very healthy. Research shows that if you are really engaged in quality of life, the telomeres lengthen, which might actually slow down your biological age, not your chronological, but your biological age, which is super fascinating. So here is visual habits and neurological processing. Is like I said, we are pre-programmed to do things, and we can use photos in different ways to trigger behavior, to shape things, and to think about the photos that we're showing and the reaction we think we're going to be getting. So, tapping into this is, I'm not going to ask you. Well, I'm going to ask you, but you don't have to respond or say it out loud. But what is this a picture of? And for us, we're analyzing the different colors and what's in it. And we're trying to go through our database right now. We're trying to recall certain memories that we can plug and play into this photo. But now, when I show you the photo, our brain is, oh yeah, I saw that. I see this. I see the hairs on the back. I see this. I see that. Is that when we look at something, our brain is going really fast to analyze it. This is actually healthy for the brain, long as it's not overwhelming, is to do this. Now, the great thing is once you see it, because you've analyzed it and you've done it, it's hard to unsee it. Now you can see the bee every time you look at this photo. But before, you might not have saw that. You just saw kind of a landscape of a black and white color, but now you can see it. So your behavior habits with photos. So I'm going to do a little exercise with you. And in your mind, I want you to tell me what you think of each of these photos. See how programmed you already are. Okay. So here, what does this photo mean? Stop. So this could be a way to reduce risk. It could be putting this on something that somebody shouldn't be going into. So right there, you just use photos as a non-photo based reminiscence thing, but actually a cue to help somebody stop. Don't go in here. The floor is wet, whatever it might be. This. We know it's buckle up, right? Because our brains automatically analyze the photo, see what it does. And then the most important thing is relate it to us. How does this impact us? So for me, when I look at this photo, I'm like, okay, it looks like an airplane. So now I can think about every time that I have sat in an airplane and seen this sign where I have to go to the bathroom and I can't get up because I have to be clicked in, is it creates a story based on the photo, and our brains are really good at trying to fill in the gaps. But we also make assumptions too as we think, but I'm not going to talk about that today. Caution. So another way we use photos in our interaction. If we just had this without the picture, we wouldn't know exactly what it meant, but we specifically know that this means there's a wet floor. So ways that we can use photos. Now, there's also physical cues that I want to mention because I think this can help with reminiscence as well. Let's go through them first and I'll share. When you see this, what is our reaction to it? Is to wave back, right? Thumbs up. This little kid's so cute. So yeah, thumbs up. I share this because it's physical interactions that can portray, for example, is if you hand somebody the photos, they're gonna have a different experience than actually sitting down and you look through that. So give them the book. But also keep in mind that our reactions are gonna impact how the other person reacts. So for example, we in society are right hand dominant. So watch yourself next time if you're right-handed, how do you pass something to somebody? Typically, you pass it to their right hand. It's opposite. So there's a lot of things we've been pre-programmed that we need to slow down and say, okay, why are we doing this? And what is it asking of the other person? So keeping that in mind when we look at photos. So here is what is a habit, because I think this is really important is photo reminiscence. Yes, you can have one session and it's great, but the impacts really come in when you incorporate it into everyday life. The photos we have around the house, the conversations, the routine visits I have with mom or dad or my friend. Those things can be really powerful. Or the grandkids, asking them what they have on their phones and looking at those photos can be a great connection point, but creating a habit of that can really instill a lot of benefits. So here is habits, and there's some changed in research on this. So these are the generalizations. Is you hear things about it takes 21 days for someone to make or break a habit, learn something new. Now that is slowly being proved false. Some of it does stick, some of it doesn't, but they're saying it takes about 21 days to make or break a habit. You see exercise programs. More research is actually showing it takes on average as the gap of all humans about 66 days, but we won't get into that. But we're just saying for that date range is 21. For millennials, it's 60. So people like myself, it takes me a long time to create a habit. So what I've noticed, unfortunately, is my society is we are so exposed to so many photos. I probably have 10,000 photos on my phone, and I can't tell you where half of them are. Is because we just take so much and we're exposed so much. Is the great thing about the photos we took in the past is we have them in a box and we took them for a specific reason to be able to revisit. And that's why I feel that a lot of seniors have these in a box to pull those out. And I challenge any of you in those rooms, pull your photos out tonight and look through them and try to think about and be intentional about revisiting those those scenarios. For somebody with dementia, I always throw it in there. It takes on average 35 days to acclimate to a new environment or learn something new. And I see this all the time. They learn that that is their seat at lunch. But the big thing I want to share with you, if you want to use photo reminiscence and make it part of your life in a healthy way, is it will take in lifestyle medicine 90 days. So it on average takes 90 days to create a lifestyle change that sticks. So it's easy to create a habit and now that habit's in place and here and there, but it's very easy to lose it. It could take days and you just lose it. They show after the 90-day mark, it's not as easy to lose because it becomes part of you and your everyday. Um, so using photos, related images for prompts and cues, which we will talk about. I just want to make sure I don't go crazy on time. So let me go a little faster. Why photos help the brain? It reduces cognitive load. So actually being visually triggered to something can actually help so that your brain doesn't have to rely so much on itself all the time. This is the same with lists as well. If you have a grocery list versus just going to the store and trying to remember everything, it reduces that cognitive load, but it can also strengthen spatial memory too, as ourself in time as we start to put ourselves into that photo and the things that were around. There's a really cool exercise I saw out there is give somebody a photo and try to have them put themselves in it and look around the room and see what else was in it. Trying to recall, was there a clock? Was there something else? That puts them right into that time to expand beyond that photo is you have to go really into your brain. Sports executive function, which is the frontal lobe, can calm the nervous system, build autonomy and confidence. So this is just an example. So orientation of self is,
Hey, Josh,
yes.
you just made a comment as far as time. Kurt and I have spoken. We know we started a couple of minutes early, so don't feel rushed.
Okay.
So you're covering the content you wish to.
Okay, cool. Will do.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Rick. So room cues is that you can use photos very much. So here we look at this photo and it can actually cue somebody. So one big thing that happens with cognition is when we get to mild cognitive impairment or dementia, oftentimes we can't think what's on the other side of a door. So having a picture of a toilet or picture of the closet can help with that. But purposeful zones too, I feel like having a picture in the kitchen that says kitchen, that can be orienting. And we'll talk about a few of these too as well. So for example, I mentioned people might revert back to their native language. So using a photo visual stimulant as well as the word bathroom or baño can help that person be more successful and orient them too as well. When you just say, hey, do you got to go to the bathroom? Cognitively, they might not be able to fully process that, but by showing a photo, they're going to be more successful labeling things. And I know sometimes it might look adolescent, but this has been hugely successful using photos or visual cues to help people with orientation. Where are their socks? Where are their pants? Can cut down from them having to look for something over and over again. Binary choice or decision making, we mentioned. We like the two decisions. But did you know that sweet and tart are the last flavors we lose the ability to taste? And I share that because I think it's powerful for, I think it's very powerful for people to be able to use this. If somebody's not eating enough, having something sweet, reverse that, reverse the meal and put the dessert first and the appetizer last will actually get them to eat more, but also their ability to actually point and make that decision. So the power of a photo, what I love is it can take a decision from cognitively that might be overstimulating and puts it in front of them where they can just point. And we see this a lot with younger kids with autism, for example. It's called a PEC system is they might have difficulty communicating. They cognitively know it, but they can't communicate it. So using a photo to be able to bring them right back to that. What would you like to do? This or this? So photos can be used in so many more ways than just to talk about, and we're constantly exposed to a photo or pictures, a sign on a street, all these things that are influencing us. I also want to share that as we go further in life, and especially with dementia, we become more reliant on the first word and the last word someone speaks. So that first sentence here could be overwhelming for somebody. But for mom and dad that might be having difficulty, is keep in mind they're dropping the middle part of that sentence. So the bottom one, come, let's take a shower. Come, shower. Keeping in mind, even the words we use can be very powerful. Now, to fill in all that blank, is using a photo to be able to do that is actually showing a picture of the shower can help with orientation or redirection as well. Routines. Broader routines we can use for photos, morning, night, so on and so forth. Friendly brain things. I just want to give some ergonomic things here is people will interact with photos more if it's at eye level. So keeping in mind, if we're going to hang a photo in a house, we want them to engage with a family photo. Make sure it's at that eye level and not too low or too high because we actually lose peripheral vision deficit. So they're not seeing that. So you want to make sure it's right in their line of vision as much as possible. I would also orient them to, hey, look at this photo. What do you think? And when you orient to something on the wall, we walk past stuff every day that we're not pulled attention to. So keeping that in mind. Now, habit stacking in photos. Now, this can be really powerful is using photos to help create or stack a habit. So for example, people that don't take their medicine every day is research shows if you put it next to the toothbrush, that they will be more likely to take their medicine because brushing your teeth is a lifelong habit where medicine might be a newer habit for them, is having them have that next to the toothbrush or even having a picture of a pill bottle that says, don't forget to take your medicine. Those cues can be really powerful and it shows they're stronger if you marry a habit to a habit. So brushing your teeth with taking your medicine. And then after that 90 days, it's just there. It will just stay. So as much as possible, using the photos as cues or triggers. Here's another example of kind of how you can use photos for orientation. So the kitchen, yep, we're in the kitchen and we want a snack. This can actually help somebody, especially with dementia. They might be wandering around, might have challenges, but this can help them as well. Research also shows that looking at food before eating can stimulate neurogenesis, neuroplasticity, and get people to eat more. There's also a great reminiscent and mindful practice is where you slow down the meal process while you eat each piece of food. And that allows your body really to absorb it and to think about it. And you could revisit different memories that way too as well over a favorite recipe. I really like these two is that we have a legacy. So using photos, not just to look at, and some people forget different parts of the story, or from perspective, they might see a story differently. So I love these. So these memory cards here are ways that you have the picture, you have a full story, and you have it from the other person's perspective that is filled in. So when you're sitting down with somebody, you have those prompts to create a really rich conversation. And these are a great way to foster that, especially if somebody is having some cognitive decline. But also, I would say these are really beneficial for people pre-cognitive decline to stimulate and keep these memories alive and keep revisiting them to strengthen that hippocampus and the amygdala as well. Quilting a conversation is the idea that when you're reminiscing, think of every aspect of that conversation as a piece of a quilt. And the idea is you want to stitch together each piece. So, for example, it might be, oh, look at this is when we visit New York. What about that Broadway play? Do you remember that song, Somewhere Over the Rainbow, Follow the Yellow Brick Road, say there's no place like home, right? Mom, is there no place like home, or do we rather be on a cruise right now? What I did is I'm stitching together all these fabrics around, and if it's with a photo, I'm taking that photo and I'm taking all these fabrics of her life and bringing them to that photo and marrying them and stitching them together. And the idea is that the more of that fabric I bring to that photo, the more powerful that reminiscence will be. And also, depending on where you are, different time of day, or revisiting the same photo more than once, you might have different outcomes over and over and over again. So keep in mind, you might look through a photo book. Don't think, oh, let's put it on the shelf and wait 3 months. Let's pick it up again next week and let's go through it again and say, last week you mentioned this. Can you tell me more about it? That's a great way to go deeper and deeper into the use of those photos. So here's this subtle pattern. So for example, this is I got my tool thing up in the corner. Research shows that when you wake up with an alarm clock, when you're older, can create some aches, and especially for people with dementia, can create more sundowning, is when we wake up with the alarm clock that goes, automatically triggers us, we have to go to work, even if we're retired. So it creates kind of that cortisol release. Research shows waking up to your favorite song can be powerful, but also just within the first 3 minutes of what you're exposed to a day can change the outcome of that day. So here is a memory wall where you can print things and put things in here. And I know Rick has a magnetic version of this too as well. But what I love about this wall is that when you wake up and you first are exposed to all those awesome photos of your family, you're starting your day off right. You're revisiting positive memories. You might remember to call somebody that day or revisit things. So exposure within the first 3 minutes of waking up can be really powerful for the person. Now, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if we've taken a psychology class, we know what this is you can't go through one step without completing the foundation before it. So you have psychological needs, foods, water, shelter, safety needs, so personal security, employment, resources, our health, our property, our house, sense of belonging, self-esteem. What I love about this, and Rick and I did a presentation about this in particular, is photos help you with every aspect of this. Photos can help cue to make you want to eat more, to get the foods that you need, to remind you to drink more by using photo prompts. Safety is reminiscing about those things. So personal security, what you did for employment, really giving kudos to mom that was a nurse for 40 years. Now she's a pension that you can talk. You're so lucky you have a pension, mom. That's so great. That builds security through reminiscence. And then from there is even looking at, oh, tell me about your best friend in high school. Do you remember that story? And showing a photo of it, and loved and belonging and legacy that we can share, to self-esteem that now at this point, the photos are in mom's hands and mom is talking, yeah, I remember this and we used to do this, this, and this. That gets into self-actualization. So you can see you can use photos throughout these foundational pieces to get them to self-actualization as well. So using photos in addition to everything else in life to step through those. So the reflective gene or mirror neuron, I share this because we are reflective by what we see. And in this research, they had a monkey eating a grape and another monkey watching that monkey eat a grape. The monkey that was watching that monkey eat a grape, they were both on brain scans and their brains lit up the same way. So what this shows is that for you and I, when we sit down with somebody and we connect about something, our reactions, our smiles, our touch, our feels, and our stories actually trigger to them, and they're thinking about, how does this relate to me? How do I connect to this? So the reflective gene can be very powerful in this. So for example, sundowning. A way to manage this might be that, and when I say sundowning, we think of it with dementia as we have behaviors at night, but research actually shows that a lot of seniors without dementia have feelings of angst when the sun is going down or coming up. And that's a biological thing that is happening in the body, release of certain neurotransmitters and hormones. Now, what if I told you that looking at certain photos could de-escalate this too as well? For example, looking at photos that are morning oriented in the morning. So pictures of cooking breakfast, your grandfather cooking breakfast for Christmas, and you have that photo, that can actually orient to the morning versus at nighttime showing pictures of people in pajamas or talking about those things. And just food for thought, a visual trigger to show how powerful this can be. Research shows that if people have sundowning and the caregiver puts pajamas on 2 hours before the sun, that visual trigger can release melatonin and decrease sundowning behavior. So it shows that we are so shaped by what we see. So keeping that in mind, or having a relaxing reminiscence at night can really help versus using reminiscence in the morning to say, hey, we need to go to a doctor's appointment, we need to go grocery shopping, and showing photos of that to somebody that needs that support to get them to know they're going to be engaging in those. This is just a interesting thing is we need 7 connection points to create a bond. So even in this is if you had 7 photos that created a connection, you might create a bond within that one sitting. So keep in mind 7 successful connections can create a bond, which can be very powerful for caregivers, for teachers, for anyone that needs that connection. I also share this is that the ability to think, um, our brains can process very, very fast. I'm gonna have you guys, if you participate with me, that's great. I can't see you anyways, but I want you to close your eyes if you're at home or in that room. Just close them just for a second. Keep your eyes closed. And I'm gonna ask you, drive home. And when you get home, raise your hand. Ready, set, go. Now, some of you probably have already raising your hand because, and you can open your eyes. The reason I share that is because in our minds, we can go really fast, between 100 and 500 times faster than the actual act of doing. And I share that because when we look at something like a photo, now the relatability of this is I could revisit a Christmas photo like this. We could revisit that whole day very fast in our mind. Or if it is somebody sharing a story about a vacation, in my mind, I could think of an entire vacation week within seconds. So you think about that, and you tell me about a cruise. I'm thinking about a cruise with my kids just a few years ago. I can think of the entire thing. They were in day camp. I went to the shows there. We had fun. We went to different islands. We went scuba diving. All of that is faster than what I could speak. So keep in mind, when you look at a photo, the brain is thinking really fast. So there's a lot of stuff that goes around. So even if you only talk about it for a minute, that could be a whole scenario inside their minds. Now, relatability is that there's photos that you and I would look at this. I don't think I've ever sat on Santa's lap. Well, that's not true. I have sat on Santa's lap once that I can remember. Now, I know it's a big family thing. So for a lot of people, a lot of people have photos of sitting on Santa's lap. So you and I could approach this very, very differently. I now would approach this as looking at this as my kid sitting on Santa's lap, because I view the world very much through them at this point. But that relation can be really powerful. Now, I say relatable photos because if I showed this to somebody that was a stock photo, a lot of people will be like, "Why are you showing me this?" And then you de-escalate that connection. Is what we learned is using real photos can help with that connection quite a bit. Using the other person's photos to connect before using your own can also be a powerful tool as well. But this, people could be scary. The lady in the front looks very much like she's like, "Hey," so that could be overstimulating. So when you're picking photos, really try to look for photos that aren't overstimulating, that have a connection, are from the other person's perspective, and include them in that conversation. Emotions Wheels, this is just one that you can download. I really like Emotions Wheels because we look at these primary emotions in the middle and we get really fixated on them. So I'll share for my residents. I'll say, okay, Mrs. Smith is sad. Okay. Now let's go to the next layer of this. What is it? She's lonely because she's living in a memory care. She's not able to get out as much. What does she feel? Does she feel abandoned or isolated? She feels isolated. So for me, I would pick photos that could expand her, in time in her mind of decreasing isolation. So things that she was a nurse, she did a vocation, I would share all of her legacy. In addition to that is I would show photos of things that she just recently did on the bus trip with us so that I can show and encourage her like, "Oh, look at this photo of you out and about and going to that restaurant," is showing those pinpoints to show that the isolation thing is down, or showing her that she's had visitors too as well. Now, you have to be careful with that too. Oh, sorry. You have to be careful with that too because you don't want to trigger anything. But I find that this emotions wheel is a great way to say, okay, mom or dad is angry right now. Why? Because they feel let down. And actually track it through and look at the outer emotion. Because what happens is we try to target emotions and don't validate them because we look at the middle. We don't always look at the outer part. So looking at those outer parts can help us actually get involved. And I find one for reminiscence really important is happiness. So right here, happiness, optimism, they're inspired. If they're inspired, let's talk about vocations and their grandkids and create that curiosity vortex. Um, the words we use can be really powerful. So this is called etymology or psychology of words, is the words we do can be really powerful. So be mindful about the words you're choosing when looking at photos. So it's not challenges, but the opportunities we have. Or they can't do it, but maybe we could do it a different way. So finding the words and the phrases that keep it really optimistic based. And we are hardwired to be more negative anyways, but we won't get into the psychology of that today. But even here this is a list of words that we use in our memory care. You can see it's very different. So instead of activities and programming, it's resident engagement versus it being an admissions is a new resident. But behavior is a form of communication. So even the way we approach a photo, saying, "Oh, they're having behaviors, we're going to use a photo in memory care." No, it's they're communicating an unmet need. So what is that unmet need? Let's use photos to try to find that. So maybe they're saying, "Oh, my daughter, I want to see my daughter," because she sees a photo. Now we know what the unmet need is. She doesn't feel like she gets to see her daughter as much. So we schedule a call or we do something. So using photos, but being mindful in the words and how we approach things can be very powerful and shape how we approach things as well. So this is the 5 stages of grief. A lot of people will go through this, especially as we're aging. Maybe a friend passes away, or even somebody gets diagnosed with cognitive impairment or dementia. So the first thing is shock or denial. No, they don't have that. Anger, I can't believe this is happening. I have my kids to take care of. Bargaining, please, dear Lord God, I will go to church every Sunday if it's not dementia. Depression, and then acceptance. What you find is that photos are a great way to go through all of these. So revisiting the legacy. So even at a time of anger is reminding them of mom and what everything mom did. Even at the bargaining is like, yes, well, we're going to have to come to an acceptance at some point, is revisiting these stories. Or shock or denial is still seeing that that person can still be that person even with dementia. So using photos, even for caregivers, can be a very powerful tool to go through this. And they're listed like this. Sometimes they're in a circle, but the thing I want to share is that you can go back and forth or you can bounce around in between these two as well. The photo-based ecosystem that I mentioned is the photos we have around the house, even the plants we have in the house, the music we share, the smells can be very powerful. So think about your house and how do you use reminiscence therapy or photo-based reminiscence. And maybe it's time to swap out some of those photos that you have in your house. Sometimes we have something, the photo fatigue, where we have the same photos and we walk by them every day and we're not engaged. Think about adding a few or swapping some out for a little bit. Like for me, I find joy. I keep all of my kids' photos in one frame from every year. And every year, I love pulling out those photos and we go through each one so I can see how much they've grown and how amazing they are, and then put them back in the frame. So small things like that can be very powerful too, as well. So what are our behaviors asking? So when we approach somebody with a photo, is we should ask ourselves, in response to our action, what are we doing? How are we giving it the questions we ask to be intentional? Now, with this is try to be prepared. So before even using photos for reminiscence, look through the photos, come up with some questions, but also keep an open mind that quilting a conversation might bring you in a completely different way. I went too fast. So here is different things that we can use photos to show resilient mindset versus a defeated mindset. And this is categorical or dualistic programming. It's putting things into two categories. But people with dementia or even just aging are really great. And being humans, that's our fourth skill. So we love to categorize things. So I'm going to ask you to categorize these in your head between a resilient mindset and a defeated mindset. Okay, let's just take that visual cue. And now that was all I showed. So I showed two opposites within. So tearing things down or building, a broken cup or a beautifully put together cup of coffee. Is each of us could relate to this. And when we look at these photos, you're looking at these as, did I build my house? I like coffee. Yes, it is or isn't, but we automatically take these photos. I want to point out we relate them to our lives. So we process them based on our lives. So when you're picking those photos, keep that in mind as well. Now, there's also a thing of growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. But what I share with this is when you have a growth mindset, this is great for your brain. So it supports cognitive functioning and can build cognitive reserves. And this is from the words we use to the photos we look at. In some cases, it could reduce cognitive decline depending on our mindset. For example, when people retire right away and they go cold turkey, sometimes that cuts down their brains like, what's going on? So finding ways to stay engaged and encourages neuroplasticity, which is that rewiring of the brain and trying different parts of the brain out, and promotes well-being too as well. Trying new things and being successful and working through them can be very powerful. Diagnosis and cognitive status, I'm just going to briefly touch on, and we're getting pretty close to the end, but these are things that can interfere with with reminiscence. First is aging, dementia, or hearing. So, for example, if somebody cannot hear because they don't have their hearing aids in or need a new prescription, that can interfere with reminiscence. So, I always say that's important to do it. Aging, as well as each phase of aging, changes and shapes our perception, but also dementia as well. But when you can't hear, what it does is you can have more dementia symptoms. You might forget things. And what I see a lot of times is if somebody can't hear because they need hearing aids or aren't supported in the right way, they become socially isolated and they don't want to participate. So they have amazing products now too as well. They actually have over-the-counter hearing amplifiers that they look like ear pods, but they do a fantastic job of cancellation and focusing in on certain things that can really help. Dementia in itself is, I want to share this because I think people need to know about this, especially with brain health, is dementia itself is not a disease, but a group of symptoms. So things like executive memory challenges, executive function challenges, disorientation, distortion. It's a group of symptoms. And under that, there's 100 different types of dementia. And each of those, what we've learned and we're doing more research on, is they react differently to photos depending on what type of dementia they have. So whether it's Alzheimer's, vascular, frontal temporal Lewy bodies, they might interact differently. For example, Alzheimer's, short-term memory loss, they remember 1930, 1940 photos from the past they love. But somebody with Lewy body with hallucinations might see a photo and think that photo is reality, that is truth. So they think you show a photo of them being a construction worker, and the next thing you know, they have a hammer and they're taking a wall down in their house. Is that they can be triggered different ways depending. So it's really important to know what type of dementia. And I always get the question, what's the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's? And how I share it is dementia is the symptom, Alzheimer's is the cause. So Alzheimer's creates dementia. Lewy bodies creates dementia. And that's how you can explain it. But what we've learned is photos can be super powerful. It can be a way to help people orient, to improve ADLs, so on and so forth. This is a really great book. I give it as a tool all the time. It just got updated, but it's called the DSM-5 TR. This has every diagnosis you can think of. It has all types of dementia, everything in it. And it breaks it down really quick to give you what type of doctor, so on and so forth, a quick overview. And it's a great resource, even aging. It will have things like arthritis in here, and it will walk you through kind of ways to treat that or who you should talk to. So this has everything you can think of, and it's a quick reference book. I always tell people it's a great resource for people. Now, this is a research project that we did, where the use of photos, for example, we found out what type of photos it is. And I want to show you how powerful this is we had people that were non-medicine compliant. They didn't want to take medicine in the community. So what we did is we had our nurses use certain photos that we've identified the resident likes a lot. So whether it's a pet or a child, what we did is we gave those to the nurses, and they would sit down before giving medicine, and they would look through a few of those photos. And just after a few minutes, they were about 50% more likely to take their medicine just because of that person sitting down and looking at a photo. So that's the power of a photo, is once you use a photo to connect, oftentimes you can redirect, or people are viewed as friends, and it opens so many more doors and avenues for that. So neurological attunement is the nonverbal things. So we talked a lot about photos and what that does. This is a great book. It talks about body languages. So for example, if you nod your head 3 times, that means keep talking. So how do you use that in reminiscence therapy? So that's one thing she particularly talks about, is how body language does that. So for me, if I see someone talking about a photo, I'm like, yes, 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 because it keeps them talking more. So small things like that can improve it as well and make it a little bit easier for you. Here's just some color too. Our eyes change, and I'm not going to slow down too much to go through it, but I'm just give you the information versus the reasons why. But lime green is one of the more prevalent colors we see as we age. So writing in the color lime green or putting it in print can be really powerful. So maybe you have a photo that you can put what it is in lime green. It keeps the eye moving forward. It can improve reading ability for people with cognitive decline. White is the hardest color to see. So things like a contrast toilet seat, that can actually increase falls. But the reason I share this is that even this picture I'm showing you, white on white, would be hard for somebody with dementia to see. So if you're using cues or photos, consider the colors we have, and keep in mind that black and white photos, depending on the color contrast, if the black color is too gray or too light, they might not be able to fully see it in the gray tone. So you really need to maybe darken it or enhance that color, enhance the photo overall. And then the color black can be perceived as scary from the kneecap down. And I share that because even certain types of colors in photos, people might not be as engaged in. So just be observant if you're noticing people don't want to talk about certain photos at certain times as well. Now, I really think that photos can be very powerful tools to help foster certain eating patterns. And a lot of that can be, if you want to dig down deep, it could even be the colors in a photo. But here is actually showing photos before even meal times for us with people with cognitive challenges that we show to eat more, and we can put healthier foods in front of them, and they're eating more of those healthier foods. But with this is even color in dining. For example, red stimulates appetite by 33%, looking at photos with more red in it. Or dark blue might suppress appetite by 28%. So looking at photos with more dark blue colors might be able to foster or intake into this too as well. Choice is actually putting these out in front of people and giving them the choices they can go through. Here's a visual image. So instead of a picture, is actually that you can get these in prints, but it's a nutrition wheel. So people aging, it can show just having a picture in the kitchen of this might orient them to make healthier choices or know what they need. For example, if you go to the B12, which is associated with cognition oftentimes, and a lot of seniors do need B12, is sometimes instead of that, putting this picture out there so they can select that food and see what it's healthy for. Just exposure to the visual trigger can be very powerful, related to a photo or also to things that can help orient them. And then just a few resources for you guys is if you're going to do research on anything, I just tell people go to Google Scholar. Um, and with Google Scholar, you're going to get peer-reviewed research. So if you're like photoreminiscence and this, which there's not much about, but if you do reminiscence and this, you'll get some articles that are peer-reviewed that can be very powerful. Instead of just Googling, you might get information that's not as, it doesn't have as much validity to it. This is me. So if you ever want to get in contact, this is my Facebook and also my LinkedIn. But I also give this to everybody too. So this is my personal cell, so just don't abuse it. But if you have questions or you want to text me something, I'm happy to answer any questions you got. And I think the next things are just all my resources.
Well, thank you so much, Josh. My goodness, we could kind of just have a discussion for the next 12 hours on all the pearls of wisdom that you shared with us. So thank you so much.